You ever had a day start with an offense and end with a bull redefining your entire sense of authority? No. Then allow me to take you back to 8:12 a.m. last Tuesday when Martin Pritchard, head of the Oakwood Hills Homeowners Association, decided to do my job, a job, I might add, that no one else had the backbone or organizational discipline to take on. People think it's just about grass height and mailbox colors. They don't understand the burden of standards, of cohesion, of keeping a community from descending into visual anarchy. That morning, I set out on patrol in my HOA-issued golf cart, clipboard in hand, coffee thermos at my side precisely as I had every Tuesday for the past 3 years. It was supposed to be routine. Check for trash bins left out past 7:00 p.m. Or remind the Jeffersons their shutters still didn't match the HOA-approved palette. And yes, confront the Moores about their offensively red fence. But of course, things didn't go to plan. When I pulled up in front of 188 Maple Hollow Lane, I saw it again, the same garish, rebellious shade of red that had mocked me for weeks. A shade Jim Moore had once, during a particularly insufferable board meeting, described as sexy frontier, frontier, as if this were some Wild West reenactment park and not a controlled, covenanted community. I parked, adjusted my cardigan, and approached. Jim was out front, cradling his ever-present bourbon mug, though it was barely past 8. "You better back up, Buttercup," he said with a smirk. Always with the smug names. I ignored him. My eyes scanned the fence and, more importantly, the violation the bottom slat recently replaced, painted that same offensive tone. Now, let me clarify something. When I nudged that slat with my foot, I wasn't trying to damage anything. I was simply testing for structural integrity, as I've done on numerous occasions. The slat, however, snapped. Old wood, perhaps, or shoddy craftsmanship. Either way, the moment it broke, my day and arguably my life broke with it. Behind that slat stood 800 pounds of muscle, rage, and inexplicable eye contact. A bull, a full-grown, red-blooded horned beast named Brutus. I would later learn. At that moment, I had no name for him, only pure, undiluted panic. His nostrils flared, his eyes locked onto mine with the kind of malevolence you'd expect from someone you'd cut off in traffic. I dropped the clipboard, turned to flee, got 3 feet before I heard the snort and then impact. My golf cart, a symbol of order and regulation, became airborne, flew over a tomato patch, shattered a raised bed, and then landed wheels up in a birdbath. And I was airborne too, for a moment. The kind of moment that seems to last forever when you're flying sideways, thinking this is how suburban legends begin. It wasn't just the cart or the tomatoes. It was the absurdity of it all. A Ring doorbell recorded every second. So did, apparently, a teenager on TikTok. By the time I crawled to the sidewalk, bruised, muddy, and bleeding respect, there were already hashtags. As I had HOA Karen trended nationally. Team Brutus reached 80K likes before noon. But here's what they don't see, what the memes can't capture. I wasn't just some petty official with a clipboard. I was trying to uphold something. People move to neighborhoods like Oakwood Hills to escape chaos. They want clean lines, matching mailboxes, harmony, and I gave them that. Every Tuesday morning, every enforcement letter, every painstaking color swatch. Jim Moore didn't care. His family lived like they were trying to cosplay rural rebellion. Chickens in the front yard. A goat that once chewed through Mrs. Ellis's azalea hedge, and Brutus, the literal bull they had acquired in what I now understand was a drunken charity auction stunt. That animal was not HOA compliant. That fence was not HOA compliant. And more than anything, their attitude was not HOA compliant. By noon, the boardroom had become a war room. I filed every possible citation I could find: trespassing, livestock endangerment, community destruction, unauthorized fence paint, and yes, emotional disruption under Section 14B, which I now admit might have been a stretch. The Moores responded by prepping like they were staging a courtroom drama. Jim with the bylaws, Lena with laminated photos, and their daughter Macy with a slideshow complete with Brutus in sunglasses and dramatic music. The mockery was relentless. But nothing compared to the emergency meeting. I arrived early, folder thick with evidence, wearing my best cardigan, People stared, whispered. Some smirked. I presented my case with every ounce of professionalism I had left, showed the footage, described the cam, even included a digitally altered image of the bull breathing fire a creative liberty. I'll admit, but meant to represent the psychological threat he posed. Jim stood and spun some homespun nonsense about trespassing and provocation. If I came into your yard and slapped your dog, he said, wouldn't you expect it to bite me? The crowd nodded. A laminated clause about agricultural zoning was passed around like a sacred scroll. Someone even applauded. But the worst blow came from Macy. That teenager stood, phone in hand, live streaming, and called me a mini dictator with a clipboard. Said Brutus had done what no one else had the guts to do, say no. People laughed. They cheered. I stood there, decades of HOA order, landscaping regulations, mailbox measurements reduced to a punchline. And yet, this wasn't over. They don't know what it's like to lose control not just of a meeting or a golf cart, but of a neighborhood. Order is fragile. Civilization is maintained by inches. And I saw it slipping through every meme, every t-shirt, every Brutus mural. I sat alone that night, icing my leg, watching the footage on loop, over and over. The moment the fence broke, the eyes of that bull, the airborne cart. I wasn't seething because I'd lost a cart. I was seething because I'd lost authority to a bull. So yes, I made the call. No, not the police. Something private, specialized. I used the phrase unconventional livestock issues. You have to speak in their language. They said they'd handled larger. I told them I didn't care how. I just wanted the bull gone, and the Moors buried in so much paperwork they forgot their own names. 3 days later, government SUVs rolled into the cul-de-sac. Men in windbreakers knocked on doors, took soil samples, whispered into radios. Something had shifted. They said it was about an environmental anomaly. I said it was about a bull breaking social order. But that's not what the news picked up. No, the news picked up bull justice. My face, frozen mid-sprint. My name, turned into hashtags. My title, reduced to Martin the Fence Kicker. Now I sit alone in my garage, surrounded by binders and bylaws, watching footage again, but not of the incident, of the woods, the hatch, the scorch marks, the animals that emerged with Brutus. Not cows, not bulls, something else. They say he's gone now, retreated, maybe evolved, but I see it differently. He started something. And when he comes back, because this neighborhood will remember that I was the only one who saw it coming, the only one who tried to stop it, and the last one who dared to enforce the rules. I hadn't intended to become the villain, not in the neighborhood, not in some teenage girl's live stream, and certainly not on the front page of the local paper beneath the headline, Bull versus Bureaucracy. But when your name is turned into a meme, when someone paints your face on a golf cart as it gets impaled by a bull, well, intentions stop mattering. Reputation does. And mine was unraveling faster than I could staple together another citation. After the meeting, I thought perhaps things would return to a sort of uneasy normal. The Moors would be humiliated in front of the HOA board. Brutus would be relocated to wherever outlaws of his kind went some pasture purgatory, and I would reclaim my post atop the neatly trimmed pyramid of Oakwood Hills, order. Instead, the opposite happened. The community didn't just forgive the Moors, they idolized them. Children biked through the streets wearing Brutus masks. Someone I suspect the Bennetts on Willow Drive ordered t-shirts that read "Live Free" or gored with an image of Brutus trampling a jack-o'-lantern, though it was months away from Halloween. They turned him into some kind of suburban Che Guevara. And worse, they laughed at me. Not to my face, of course, not yet, but in whispers, in smirks, in how they left their garbage bins just a little crooked, as if daring me to notice I noticed. And then, Brutus vanished, gone without a trace. One day, he was headbutting lawn ornaments. The next, he was an urban legend. The Moors claimed they were just as surprised, but I didn't buy it. Not for a second. I knew a smokescreen when I saw one, but so, this wasn't just a rogue animal. It was a cover-up. The more I watched the footage, yes, I downloaded it. Frame by frame, the more convinced I became that Brutus had stumbled onto something unnatural. No, not just stumbled. Led to it. Then came the EPA. 2 white SUVs, no warning. They moved like ghosts, efficient, expressionless, trained. I tried to offer assistance. I had maps, records, HOA violations going back 10 years that could show them patterns, abnormalities, anything useful. They didn't want them. One of them even suggested I step back for the safety of the investigation. Safety, as if I didn't know every inch of this neighborhood, as if I hadn't walked its sidewalks in the rain, checking shrub height and fence alignment, when no one else would. But I was no longer a trusted steward. I was a nuisance, or worse, an embarrassment. Even the board had turned. Darlene, Mom, that traitor, started posting sympathy posts about Brutus. Maybe he just wanted peace. She wrote beneath a photo of Brutus staring nobly into the distance. Peace, he destroyed a golf cart and trampled my credibility. But it didn't matter. The narrative had shifted. The Moors weren't rule breakers anymore. They were folk heroes. That's when I knew I needed help. Not from the police. They'd already dismissed me after I filed the second noise complaint about the Moors playing country rock at disruptive volumes. No, I needed someone who dealt in precision, in containment. I reached out to a contact I hadn't spoken to since my brief stint in municipal consulting, a man known simply as Gray. I didn't ask for details. He didn't offer any. All I needed to know was he had handled unconventional livestock issues. That was enough. Gray arrived under the cover of early morning. Unmarked van, mirrored sunglasses. He didn't speak much, but when he opened the back of his van, I saw the equipment that looked more military than agricultural. Tranquilizer rifles, thermal scanners, a briefcase full of documents labeled with acronyms I didn't recognize. I told him about the hatch, about the scorch marks, about the shapes I'd seen behind Brutus. He didn't blink. He just nodded and said, "We'll neutralize the subject. Then secure the site." I offered to assist, of course, provided coordinates, trail maps, even tips about local animal behavior. He took them without comment, then told me to keep my head down. That's when I realized Gray wasn't just here for the bull. He was here for whatever the bull had found or woken up. Meanwhile, the neighborhood spiraled. Kids formed Brutus patrols, claiming they saw him at night near the woods. Someone set up a 24-hour live stream facing the old quarry, just in case. The Moors didn't discourage it. If anything, they fed the fire. Their daughter Macy posted cryptic videos. "He's not gone," she whispered to the camera in one clip. "He's preparing for what?" But the most disturbing development came from Randy the Moor's cousin, an unstable man with access to drone technology and, reportedly, a flamethrower license. I saw him one evening near the transmission towers, fiddling with equipment. I tried to confront him, ask what he was doing. He just grinned and said, "Looking for the pulse." Then he laughed and walked into the trees. Wow, the pulse, that's what they called it now. A vibration that came from underground. Faint but persistent. People said it hummed through their walls at night, that their pets wouldn't go near the old fence line. I felt it, too. One night I put a glass of water on the floor in my garage and watched the ripples spread every time the hum returned. Rhythmic, mechanical, alive. I started recording everything, every strange light, every shadow. I filled notebooks with observations, sketches, even timestamps. My garage became a war room. I slept in a lawn chair next to my whiteboard. I didn't trust the Moors. I didn't trust the board. I only trusted Gray. He was the only one who understood. Then came the night Brutus returned. I didn't see it myself. I heard it. A low bellow that shook the windows. Then the trees rustled like something massive was moving through them, but not like a bull. More coordinated, more intelligent. I grabbed my binoculars, scanned the horizon. Nothing. But in the morning, the grass near the old hatch was blackened again, and something had left deep, circular impressions in the soil. Gray called it confirmation. He prepped for containment. I begged to go with him. I had documentation, I had maps. But he refused, said I was compromised. I shouted after him that this was my neighborhood, that I had authority here. But Gray was already gone. Now I wait. The hatch pulses, the air tastes different. And I know something's coming. You can mock me. Me, yeah. Paint at me on your t-shirts. But when whatever is beneath that hatch rises, when the thing Brutus serves walks into the daylight, I'll be the one who tried to warn you. I saw the signs. I kept the order, and I will not be laughed at again. Do you know what true helplessness feels like? It's not panic. Panic is loud, desperate, clumsy. But helplessness, it's quiet. It seeps in like fog, turning every movement into theater, every word into static. I felt it for the first time not when Brutus broke my golf cart, or when the HOA meeting turned against me, but days later, when I stood in the woods, alone, flashlight beam flickering across a clearing that hadn't been there the day before. The grass was gone, charred black, flattened in a perfect circle. In the center, a metal hatch opened just enough to reveal stairs descending into a void that had no business being in Oakwood Hills. I didn't go in. Not yet. I stood there, paralyzed. The silence around me so thick I thought I could hear my own blood moving. Behind me, the trees groaned in a wind that hadn't existed seconds earlier. Gray had gone in the night before, said he'd neutralize whatever was responding to the pulse. He hadn't come back. His van was still parked near my driveway, engine cold, doors locked. I knocked. No answer. Through the window, I saw the rifle case open, the weapon gone, but the seat was clean. Too clean. No food wrappers. No signs of human passage. As if the van had appeared fully assembled, staged for a scene that had yet to begin. That's when I stopped sleeping entirely. Every hour after dark became surveillance. I watched the hatch from a camouflage tent I pitched beneath a row of hedges near the Jeffersons' yard. I didn't tell them. They'd already begun giving me the pity glance the kind neighbors reserve for the recently divorced or publicly humiliated. I kept my distance. I had a job. Watch. Document. Wait. But what I saw, it didn't fit into any report. 3 nights ago, the lights began, not bright, just a shimmer like heat rising from pavement, but pale green, undulating across the field. I blinked and it was gone, but the trees moved, not like they were pushed, like they stepped aside. And out of that unnatural stillness, Brutus emerged. He didn't look like he had when he attacked me. Back then, he was angry, primal, stupid in the way large animals often are. But this version was composed. His movements deliberate. He didn't snort or charge. He walked, as if patrolling. Behind him, not shapes, but shadows, impressions of things that shouldn't exist. They clung to the corners of the clearing, just beyond the reach of my binoculars. I called the board, left voicemails. Something is happening. I said, the bull is back. The hatch is active. We need to evacuate. No one responded, not even Darlene. I saw her post an image that morning. Brutus, rendered in glowing gold, under the caption, "He protects us now." They'd gone from ignoring me to worshiping the thing that had destroyed our community. I made one last attempt at diplomacy. I walked to the Moore's house just after dusk. Lena answered. She didn't look surprised to see me. Her expression was blank polite, detached, like a receptionist in a building that no longer had occupants. I asked her where Brutus was. She didn't flinch. He's not ours anymore. She said, he chose something else. When I pressed, she just closed the door. That was it, as if I were asking about a missing garden hose. And then the town changed. It didn't happen all at once. First, the air. It thickened, not humid dense, like walking through memory foam. Then the sound. Birds stopped chirping. Dogs refused to go outside. Phones lost signal near the woods. The local paper published an article titled "Oakwood Hills Embraces Mystery," quoting residents who claimed Brutus was a guardian of ancient secrets. I checked the author. It was Macy. She'd become our unofficial chronicler, and apparently our publicist. Her latest video was called "The Brutus Event Awakening," and in it, she said we should stop resisting what's coming. I reported the video for misinformation. It gained 30,000 views overnight. When Gray returned, if it was Gray, he was different. I saw him from a distance, near the hatch. He moved slowly, like each joint had to remember how to bend. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't speak, just stood at the edge of the circle, scanning the trees. I watched him for an hour. Then, suddenly, he dropped to his knees and pressed his hand to the earth. I thought he was praying. Then I realized the ground beneath him was glowing. The next morning, his van was gone. No tire tracks, just a single hoof print in the center of my driveway. I decided to go to the hatch, alone, Bob, armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and an old kitchen knife I kept for trimming hedges. I descended the stairs slowly, counting each step, 43 in total. The walls were metal, cold, lined with symbols I couldn't identify. They pulsed faintly as I passed, as if sensing me. I reached the bottom and entered a chamber that defied all logic. A massive sphere hung in the center, suspended by cables that didn't connect to anything. Beneath it, the earth was scorched in a spiral pattern. Around the edges, bones. Not animal, not human, something in between. And standing in front of the sphere was Brutus. He turned slowly as if expecting me. His eyes glowed faintly, not red, not yellow, a color I had no name for. I didn't move. Neither did he. Then, from behind the sphere, something emerged. It walked upright, but bent, tall, with limbs too long and a face that shimmered like heat waves. It didn't speak, but I heard it, in my mind. He is the herald. It said, "You built fences. He tore them down. You enforced rules. He redefined them. You thought order was control. You were wrong. I dropped the knife. I don't know why. My hands just opened. Brutus stepped aside. The creature walked past me. No malice, no threat, just inevitability. Like a tide that had finally come back for what it left behind. I ran, back up the stairs, through the trees, into the heart of the neighborhood. But something had changed. Every house I passed empty. Lights on, but no movement. Driveways full, but no sound. I rang a dozen doorbells. No one answered. It was like they'd vanished, or hidden. Back in my garage, I locked the door, covered the windows. I turned off the power and sat in the dark. The hum returned that night, stronger, deeper. It vibrated the concrete, shook dust from the ceiling. I opened my notebook and began to write. Not observations this time. Warnings. I don't know what's coming, but I know who brings it. And it's not a man. It's not a bull. It's something older. And I was the first to see it. The only one who still remembers what we used to be before the fences fell. I awoke to silence. Not the ordinary kind. Not the suburban calm broken by birds or the hum of sprinklers, but a hollow, pressurized silence. Like the world had gone underwater without telling me. I hadn't fallen asleep intentionally. I don't do that anymore. Sleep is too vulnerable, too slow, but exhaustion had betrayed me. I must have passed out in the garage again, slumped over my makeshift observation station where I'd drawn diagrams of the clearing, Brutus, the hatch, the symbols, things I still couldn't understand. When I sat up, my back cracked like a falling tree. The fluorescent light above me flickered, as if unsure whether it still belonged in this reality. My radio scanner crackled once, then went dead. I looked out the slits in the blacked-out garage window. The sky was wrong. Not stormy, just tinted with a bruise like violet. That color hadn't been there yesterday. I scanned the street, mailboxes still aligned, cars in driveways, but no people, no dogs, no movement. It was as if the neighborhood was posing for a portrait no one asked for. I gathered what little gear I had left, an emergency flashlight, my last notebook, 2 bottles of water, and a rusted walkie-talkie that only ever connected to static. Then I made my way toward the old transmission towers, following the edge of the woods where the grass grew shorter, like it was being trimmed by something unseen. I'd heard the reports, rumors passed in whispers or late-night posts that vanished before sunrise. Someone had seen Brutus there. Others had seen more. Shapes that didn't match any known animal. One person claimed the air itself parted when they walked past, like it was choosing not to touch them. I didn't walk the trail this time. I cut through backyards, stepping over overturned lawn chairs and abandoned croquet sets. Oakwood Hills had once prided itself on its uniformity, on being a place untouched by the chaos of the outside world. Now it looked like it had been abandoned mid-breath. At the base of the towers, I found scorch marks again, but not in a circle. This time they spiraled outward from a central point, forming a massive, invisible signature across the grass, and there in the center stood Brutus, alone. His horns were stained with something black, not blood, something thicker, iridescent, clinging to the edges like oil on water. His eyes met mine, and I froze. Not because I was afraid he'd charge. I knew he wouldn't. He didn't see me as a threat anymore. Maybe he never had. Maybe I had only ever been an obstacle, something to be shoved aside. Behind him, the hatch yawned open again, wider now, almost inviting. I could see lights within it, pulsing in patterns too deliberate to be random. Morse code a warning. Or maybe it wasn't for us. Maybe it never was. That's when the ground shuddered. Not an earthquake. This was slower, rhythmic, like a heartbeat, but deeper. I felt it in my teeth, in my bones. The air buzzed with a sound just beneath the threshold of human hearing, like a song meant for something else. And then they came. Not Brutus, not Gray, the others. They didn't emerge from the hatch. They emerged from the woods. From the spaces between trees that had never been there before. Creatures, tall, jointed wrong, moving like marionettes cut from their strings but still dancing. Their skins shimmered like graphite. Their movements were not predatory, but deliberate, as if they had a purpose and I was simply background. One passed within 10 feet of me and did not even glance my way. Another knelt beside Brutus and placed a limb hand claw on his flank. The bull didn't move. He stood regal, still, as if presiding over a sacred ritual. I backed away slowly, but not out of fear. There was no fight left in me, only understanding. A horrible, bitter understanding. I had tried to enforce order, structure, fences, and codes, but this wasn't about breaking the rules. This was about rewriting them entirely. The hatch pulsed. A vibration rippled through the soil, splitting a line of grass from root to tip. A low, harmonic hum erupted, and I felt the air shift again. This time I saw it. The trees bent not from wind, but from pressure, like something was pushing against the edges of our world. Suddenly, Brutus reared his head and bellowed. The sound was not natural. It echoed not just through the air, but through the metal of the towers, through my ribcage, through the earth itself. It was a call, a signal, and the creatures responded. They didn't speak. They didn't roar. They simply turned synchronously and walked back into the hatch. All but Brutus. He waited, watched me, then turned slowly, walked to the threshold of the hatch, and descended into the light. I stood alone in the field, surrounded by the remnants of a moment I could never explain. I didn't follow, not because I was afraid, but because I knew whatever waited beyond that door had already chosen its emissaries. When I returned to my house, the sky had returned to a dull gray, but nothing else was the same. The lights in the houses were flickering. My neighbors had reappeared, somehow, but they walked slower, spoke quieter, as if they had all been let in on a secret they now had to protect. I saw Darlene at her porch. She waved like nothing had happened, like we hadn't all witnessed something that would reshape the fabric of our understanding. I turned and walked back to my garage, locked the door, sat down, and wrote one final report. Not for the HOA, not for the government. For whoever finds this, you will hear stories about Brutus. That he was a viral icon, a suburban menace, a symbol of rebellion. They're all wrong. He was a messenger, and now the door is open. It's been 37 days since Brutus disappeared into the hatch for the final time, or what I assumed was final. Time is difficult to measure now. Clocks still tick, but hours feel elastic, sometimes snapping back violently, sometimes stretching until they lose all meaning. Oakwood Hills is not what it was. The lawns are still trimmed. The mailboxes still stand at regulation height, but none of it matters anymore. Not when the ground itself hums with memory. Not when you know that beneath your feet, something ancient and unfinished is waiting. I no longer walk the neighborhood. I observe it. I monitor it from inside my garage, where I've established a perimeter of symbols I copied from the hatch walls. I don't know what they mean, but since I chalked them across my threshold, the humming beneath the concrete has stopped at the door. That's something, a small control in a world that has grown allergic to order. The EPA left, quietly, without answers. One morning the SUVs were gone, their black tire tracks fading like ghosts into the cul-de-sac. They never debriefed us, never told us what they found in the hatch. Maybe they didn't know. Or maybe they never made it out. I've read enough reports to recognize a failed containment protocol when I see one. Oakwood Hills has become a blind spot officially labeled a zoned ecological transition area, which is a bureaucratic way of saying we gave up. The moors moved. Not far, just beyond the old property line, into an abandoned farmhouse where HOA regulations never applied. Jim no longer waves when I drive past, not that I expect him to. He spends most of his time on the porch, staring at the tree line like he's waiting for something. Lena keeps a garden now, nothing ornamental. All herbs and root vegetables, functional, quiet. But it's Macy who concerns me the most. She doesn't film anymore. She records. There's a difference. Her camera is always on, but there's no audience. She documents everything: shadows across the yard, the way the wind shifts when the humming begins, the patterns in the flickering porch lights. She's looking for something. She's closer to it than she realizes. And then there's the field. The clearing where the hatch used to be has grown over, but wrong. The grass is the same color, but it doesn't bend when you step on it. It's too smooth, too compliant, like it's pretending to be grass. Kids no longer play there. Pets refuse to cross the property line. One day I saw a hawk drop from the sky just above it, no apparent injury, just lifeless, like it had been unplugged mid-flight. I buried it in my yard. That night, the dirt covering the body pulsed with a faint green light. I dug it up the next morning. The hawk was gone. Only the feathers remained, neatly arranged in a spiral. The board has been dissolved. Officially, due to lack of participation. Unofficially, because I was the last one attending the meetings. Darlene sent a final email thanking everyone for their journey of transformation and attached a photo of Brutus etched into stone. I think she carved it herself. She signed off with a phrase I didn't recognize at first. The field remembers. It was spray painted across the side of the old clubhouse 2 days later. I didn't remove it. I don't think I can. I don't sleep in my house anymore. I sleep in the garage, under a makeshift canopy of lead-lined blankets. Not because I think it helps, but because it makes me feel less visible. At night, the lights from the field return, not constant, not regular. But when they appear, the power flickers and the air tastes metallic. During one of these episodes, I saw Brutus again, just for a second, standing at the edge of the trees, half shadowed, half glowing, as if the very rules of visibility were optional to him now. He looked older, larger. His horns had changed, elongated and wrapped with something that pulsed faintly like bioluminescent roots. He didn't move, he just watched. Then he stepped backward into the dark, and the light vanished with him. The next morning, I found a new print in the driveway. Not a hoof print, not quite. It had the general shape, but it was segmented, like armor. Organic, but not natural. I traced it, filed a report in my notebook, marked the date, day 31, post-descent. I've started categorizing events like that. Everything now is before or after the descent. I once tried to explain all of this to a reporter who came snooping after the EPA left. I brought him into the garage, showed him the footage I'd recorded on old cameras not connected to the grid, drew diagrams, played him the audio clips of the hum. He smiled politely, took notes, then he left. That night, his car was found idling at the gas station near the freeway. No sign of him, only a napkin on the passenger seat with the phrase "he knows the path" scrawled in green ink. I recognized the handwriting. It was mine. Sometimes the trees speak, not in words, in rhythms, the way the wind moves, the way the branches clack against each other. It carries intent, warning, or invitation. I don't answer. I no longer respond to things I can't define. That's what led me here. My need to label, to quantify, to control. But despite it all, I still believe I was right. I didn't start this. I didn't summon it. I enforced the rules. I built the boundaries. And in doing so, I revealed the one thing no one else wanted to see, that our fences were never to keep things in. They were to keep things out. And now the gate is open. Sometimes I wonder what Brutus was before we got him. They said he came from a charity auction, a last-minute bid at a fundraiser. But there are no records, no farm, no owner, just a receipt with a line item. One bull, donor anonymous. I asked Lena once if she remembered the name of the charity. She said she didn't. looked straight through me when she said it, like the memory had been erased. I believe now that Brutus wasn't sent. He was returned. Last week, I found a crack forming in the asphalt at the cul-de-sac center. Not from weather, not from age. A perfect line, straight and narrow, as if drawn by a compass point. I followed it. It ends at the edge of the field. I placed my hand on it. It was warm. I still write my reports. Still log times, frequencies, anomalies. I doubt anyone will read them. But maybe they'll serve as a record for whoever finds this place next. Because someone will. Eventually, they'll see the perfect houses, the untouched lawns, the pristine silence. And they'll wonder what happened here. Let this be your answer. The rules failed. The bull remembered, and the earth woke up.